the quiet suburb of Pine Grove, where the wild truly meets the civilized, an unspoken, delicate balance exists. But when the relentless laws of nature are violently challenged, survival transforms into a desperate, brutal game. Clara Miller had always been a caretaker, a silent guardian to the stray souls who wandered to the edges of her peaceful home. Yet, nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for Luna, a pregnant bobcat who, against all odds, seemed to trust her. It was a fragile life, carrying more than just her own survival on her weary shoulders. But just as nature can be astonishingly kind, it can, with chilling speed, turn incredibly cruel. A silent, terrifying predator lurked, hidden deep in the oppressive shadows of the towering pines, a creature foreign to these familiar lands, yet terrifyingly adept in the ancient, deadly art of ambush. When destiny, cold and unyielding, violently collided on one fateful, sun-drenched afternoon, it was no longer about mere territory or primal instinct. No, it was starkly, terrifyingly about life or death. Would the untamed wilderness brutally reclaim its own? Or would a most unexpected, fragile alliance dramatically shift the very course of nature itself? This is a gripping story of raw survival, quiet courage, and the profound, undeniable bond that can form between the untamed spirit and the vulnerable human heart. The late afternoon sun, a fiery orb, cast long, stretching shadows across Pine Grove. A quiet, seemingly peaceful suburban neighborhood nestled on the very outskirts of Jacksonville, Florida. This area was renowned for its dense, almost impenetrable pine forests that aggressively bordered the meticulously manicured lawns, forging a strange, often unsettling blend of raw wilderness and encroaching civilization. It was here, in this liminal space, that Clara Miller, a compassionate 42-year-old hospice nurse, had made her home for the past decade. Clara's modest, charming ranch-style house, with its inviting wraparound porch and lovingly tended garden, had over time become something of an unexpected sanctuary for the local wildlife. Her colleagues at St. Vincent's Hospital often playfully, or perhaps half seriously, joked that she was running an unofficial animal welfare center right out of her own backyard. Every single morning, without fail, before heading to her demanding shift, she would leave out fresh water and carefully portioned food for the neighborhood strays, both the skittish felines and the lumbering canines, who had, over time, come to utterly rely on her unwavering kindness. It was during one of these quiet, early March morning routines that Clara first, breathtakingly, noticed the pregnant bobcat. Unlike the usual, timid strays, this creature possessed a distinctive, almost regal grace about her, moving with the quiet, inherent confidence of a truly wild animal that had, inexplicably, found itself drawn to the precarious edges of human habitation. The bobcat's stunning tawny fur was exquisitely marked with beautiful, deep black spots, and despite her heavily swollen belly, she maintained an athletic, powerful build that spoke volumes of her innate, predatory nature. Clara, with her many years of gentle experience handling frightened strays, instinctively knew better than to ever approach the wild animal directly. Instead, with cautious respect, she began leaving out fresh water and small, tempting portions of raw chicken at the far edge of her property, precisely where the predictable suburban landscape abruptly merged with the wild, untamed pine forest. She lovingly named the bobcat Luna, after the delicate wildflowers that grew in vibrant abundance around her property. "You're welcome here, sweet girl." Clara would softly whisper from her porch, her voice barely audible, watching as Luna, with a cautious, almost hesitant grace, approached the offerings each morning. Just keep your distance, and we'll get along just fine. Across the quiet, tree-lined street lived Ben Carter, a somber, withdrawn 45-year-old former military pilot. He had retreated, deep within himself, into a stark, self-imposed isolation following the devastating loss of his son, Ethan, in a horrific car accident 2 agonizing years prior. The sheer tragedy had not only brutally claimed his only child, but had also shattered and led to the painful dissolution of his marriage. Now, Ben's only constant, his sole companion in the quiet, empty house, was Rusty, a loyal 4-year-old German shepherd who had been Ethan's absolutely beloved pet. Ben's property, in stark contrast to Clara's lovingly well-tended garden, sadly showed glaring signs of neglect. The grass had grown somewhat wild, unruly, and the once beautiful flowers that his ex-wife had carefully planted were now choked and overcome by persistent weeds. He spent the vast majority of his days confined inside, working remotely as a flight simulator instructor for a private aviation company, the virtual world offering a grim escape from the real one. The only times he ever ventured out were for Rusty's necessary walks, which he deliberately took at odd, unsociable hours to fiercely avoid any chance encounters with his neighbors. From the isolated perch of his home office window, Ben had, with a sort of detached, mild curiosity, observed Clara's consistent morning ritual. He had noticed the bobcat, too, but unlike his neighbor's clear, concerned interest, he viewed the wild animal's presence with cold, military pragmatism. Simply another potential problem in an already overwhelmingly complicated world. "Keep your distance, Rusty," he would quietly, firmly warn his dog whenever they spotted Luna during their solitary, pre-dawn walks. Rusty, despite his rigorous training and natural, keen curiosity, seemed to profoundly understand the underlying gravity in his master's quiet voice and would obediently, instantly stay close. As March relentlessly progressed, Clara began to notice subtle, yet significant changes in Luna's behavior. The bobcat began appearing far more frequently, sometimes twice or even 3 times a day, and would often seek rest and refuge in the deep, cool shade of the large pine trees that bordered Clara's property. Her movements had visibly become more labored, slower, and Clara, with a growing knot of worry, suspected that the birth was rapidly approaching. "She's choosing to stay close," Clara mentioned, her voice laced with concern, to Emily, her sympathetic colleague at the hospital during their brief lunch break. "I'm so worried about her. Wild animals, they usually avoid human contact, especially when they're about to give birth." "Maybe she senses that you're safe," Emily suggested gently, thoughtfully stirring her coffee. "Animals, they just have such good instincts about these kinds of things." But what neither Clara nor Luna, in their quiet understanding, could possibly have anticipated was the other, far more sinister presence that had been silently, stealthily drawn to the area. It was a massive, terrifying Burmese python, a colossal serpent that had likely escaped, or worse, been cruelly released by an utterly irresponsible, exotic pet owner. These invasive, destructive snakes had become an increasing, alarming problem throughout Florida, though they were still blessedly rare this far north. This particular python had been brutally surviving, even thriving, in the dense, unforgiving pine forest, growing to an impressive, chilling length of nearly 15 feet. It had been ruthlessly sustaining itself on the local wildlife, and Luna's regular, predictable appearances at the edge of Clara's property had certainly not gone unnoticed by the opportunistic, cold-blooded predator. The attack came with shocking speed and brutality on a warm, otherwise peaceful Saturday afternoon in late March. Clara had just returned, weary, from her morning shift at the hospital, and was about to check on Luna's feeding station when she heard an unusual, deeply disturbing commotion erupt from the very edge of her property. The sound was unlike anything she had ever heard before. A horrifying mix of desperate, wild yelps and the violent, thrashing rustle of underbrush. What she saw, what greeted her terrified eyes when she rounded the corner of her house, made her blood run instantly, icily cold. The massive, monstrous python had somehow managed to ambush Luna, its incredibly powerful coils already wrapped tightly, relentlessly, around the bobcat's struggling body. Luna was fighting with every ounce of her wild strength. But her heavily pregnant condition had tragically made her vulnerable, and the python's grip was absolute, unforgiving, and relentless. "Oh God, no!" Clara's cry, raw with pure terror, pierced the quiet afternoon air. She looked around frantically, desperately, for something, anything, absolutely anything she could possibly use to help. But the sheer, horrifying sight of the massive, constricting snake had utterly frozen her in place. Her extensive medical training, the training that had prepared her for all manner of human emergencies, seemed utterly, tragically useless in the face of this brutal, wild confrontation. Across the street, Rusty's acutely sensitive hearing instantly picked up both Clara's raw cry and the horrifying sounds of the struggle. The German shepherd's aggressive, urgent barking violently drew Ben away from his computer screen, where he'd been calmly reviewing flight patterns with a student. "I'm sorry, I need to check something," Ben told his student. His voice clipped, hurried, instantly muting his microphone. Rusty's barking had taken on a desperate, panicked urgency he'd never, ever heard before. And years of rigorous military training had taught Ben, implicitly, to trust in animals' primal instincts. Ben was just about to investigate the commotion when, startlingly, his phone rang. It was Clara's number. They had exchanged contact information months ago during a boring neighborhood watch meeting, though they had barely spoken, truly spoken, since. "Ben, please, I need help." Clara's voice was trembling uncontrollably, thick with fear. "There's a python, a huge python, attacking a bobcat in my yard. I don't know what to do." The sheer, raw urgency in her voice instantly triggered something deep within Ben, the same dormant instinct that had served him so well, saved him countless times during his military service. Without a single moment's hesitation, he grabbed his heavy work gloves from the garage and sprinted, full speed, across the street, Rusty following closely, protectively, at his heels. The scene that violently greeted them, that slammed into their senses, was pure, horrifying chaos. The python had brutally tightened its already crushing grip on Luna, who was still fighting, but clearly, heartbreakingly, showing undeniable signs of utter exhaustion. Clara stood just a few feet away, hot tears streaming, unchecked, down her face as she watched, utterly helpless, the horrifying spectacle unfold. Instantly, Ben's dormant military training, sharp and precise, kicked into hyperdrive. He assessed the dire, chaotic situation with the same cool, detached clarity he'd used during terrifying combat missions. The python's massive, menacing head was thankfully visible, and its undivided, ruthless attention was focused entirely, relentlessly, on brutally subduing Luna. This was their single, crucial advantage. "Rusty, stay," Ben commanded sharply, his voice cutting through the panic, and the loyal German shepherd immediately held his position, a picture of tense, coiled readiness, though his body trembled with controlled urgency. Ben's eyes rapidly scanned the ground, his mind racing, and spotted a fallen pine branch, thick and sturdy, roughly 4 feet long, substantial enough, hopefully, to serve as a makeshift lever. "Clara, I need you to be ready," Ben called out, his voice surprisingly steady, authoritative, cutting through her fear. "When I give the signal, you'll need to pull the bobcat free. Can you do that?" Clara, her face streaked with tears, nodded fiercely, wiping them away with the back of her hand. Despite her overwhelming terror, she moved closer, her body coiled, ready to act. Ben cautiously, slowly, approached the violently entangled animals, the heavy branch gripped firmly in his hands. "Rusty, bark," he commanded, a single, sharp word, and the German shepherd immediately unleashed a torrent of sharp, aggressive barks that violently, successfully, grabbed the python's undivided attention. The snake's massive triangular head turned, just slightly, towards this new, unexpected threat, its powerful coils loosening just fractionally in response. That was all Ben desperately needed. In one swift, powerful motion, he savagely wedged the thick branch between the python's constricting coils and Luna's struggling body, using it brutally as a lever to create a precious, life-saving sliver of space. "Now, Clara, pull." Clara, adrenaline coursing through her veins, darted forward, her hands finding Luna's front legs, pulling with every ounce of her desperate strength. The pregnant bobcat, sensing the sudden, miraculous opportunity, somehow, miraculously, used her last reserves of energy to wrench herself free of the python's momentarily loosened grip. As soon as Luna was miraculously clear, Ben dropped the branch, letting it clatter, and backed away quickly, instinctively calling Rusty to his side. The python, its intended prey having agonizingly escaped its deadly embrace, began to slowly, deliberately retreat back into the thick, concealing underbrush. Ben and Clara watched, breathless, hearts hammering against their ribs, as the massive, terrifying snake silently disappeared back into the dense, oppressive pine forest. Their hearts were racing, pounding, from the sheer, brutal intensity of the encounter. Luna had collapsed just a few feet away, her breathing painfully labored but mercifully steady. Despite the horrifying ordeal, she made no attempt at all, to flee, perhaps too utterly exhausted, or perhaps, just perhaps, recognizing, understanding, that these two strange humans had, against all odds, saved her life. She needs help," Clara said, her voice shaking, but her nurse's instincts, sharp and focused, instantly taking over as she gently examined Luna from a safe, respectful distance. The python may have injured her, and she's so close to giving birth. Ben, utterly surprising himself, heard his own voice speak up, the words tumbling out before he could even fully process what he was offering. "My garage, it's empty and climate-controlled. We could set up a safe space for her there." The words were out, offered, a lifeline. But seeing Clara's sudden, breathtakingly grateful smile made him realize, with startling clarity, that he couldn't want to take them back. What followed was a meticulously, almost miraculously orchestrated rescue operation. Ben, moving with a quiet purpose he hadn't felt in years, retrieved a large, sturdy dog crate from his garage, while Clara, her hands still trembling slightly, frantically called a local wildlife veterinarian she knew, thankfully through the hospital. Together, with a shared, gentle urgency, they managed to carefully guide the utterly exhausted bobcat into the crate, using only soft, reassuring movements and quiet, soothing voices. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the compassionate wildlife vet, arrived within the hour, her presence a calming force. After a careful, thorough examination, she confirmed that while Luna was indeed bruised and profoundly exhausted, miraculously, there were no serious, life-threatening injuries. However, the sheer, brutal stress of the python attack had tragically triggered early labor. "She's going to give birth very, very soon," Dr. Reed announced softly, her gaze steady. Moving her to a wildlife center now would simply be too risky, too traumatic. "The very best thing, the only thing we can do, is provide a quiet, safe space right here and meticulously monitor her progress." And so, against all conventional logic, Ben's silent, empty garage was astonishingly transformed into a makeshift, temporary maternity ward. They quickly created a separate, secluded area using privacy screens, equipping it with soft, clean blankets and a shallow, easily accessible water dish. Dr. Reed patiently showed them exactly how to monitor Luna's condition from a safe, non-intrusive distance. Utilizing a baby monitor equipped with a small, discreet camera. That evening, as they waited, tense with anticipation for the undeniable signs of labor, Ben and Clara sat together on his front porch, watching the fiery sun slowly, beautifully set over the dense, dark pine forest. Rusty lay contentedly at their feet, alert, his ears occasionally twitching, but visibly relaxed. "I haven't used that military training in years," Ben said quietly, finally breaking the comfortable yet emotionally charged silence. Never thought I'd need it, here in suburban Florida." Clara turned to look at him, truly, deeply seeing him, perhaps for the very first time. The etched lines of grief on his face seemed somehow softer, less harsh, in the gentle, fading evening light. "I'm so glad you were here," she said simply, her voice quiet, sincere. I couldn't have helped her alone." Ben nodded slowly, then, surprising even himself, continued, his voice low, raw with emotion. "After Ethan died, after the divorce, I thought keeping to myself, it was easier, safer." He gently, absently, patted Rusty's head. "Ethan, he loved this dog so much. Sometimes it's just hard, even looking at Rusty, without seeing my son's face." Clara's hand, warm and comforting, found his arm squeezing gently. "Grief, it has a way of making us build these towering walls," she said softly, her voice full of understanding. "But sometimes life, it just finds these unexpected ways to break them down." Their quiet, intimate conversation was suddenly, gently interrupted by a soft, electronic chime from the baby monitor. Luna had finally, definitively, begun to show the unmistakable signs of active labor. The next 12 hours were a blur of intense anticipation, followed by moments of pure, astonishing wonder. Under Dr. Reed's calm, expert guidance, they watched, spellbound, via the monitor as Luna, with quiet strength, gave birth to 5 incredibly tiny, fragile bobcat kittens. Each arrival, each small, miraculous life entering the world, was celebrated quietly, reverently, from the safety of Ben's living room, where they had set up their makeshift monitoring station. 5 little fighters, Dr. Reed announced proudly, a wide, tired smile on her face after the last precious kitten was born. Mom and babies, they all look healthy. But the next 48 hours, they will be absolutely crucial. Those vital, critical 48 hours painstakingly turned into weeks, as Clara and Ben, their lives unexpectedly, irrevocably intertwined, worked tirelessly together to care for their unusual, wild guests. They quickly developed a seamless routine. Clara would check on the Bobcat family before and after her demanding hospital shifts, while Ben, dedicated and watchful, monitored them meticulously during the day between his remote flight simulation classes. Rusty, surprisingly, proved to be an excellent, gentle guardian, his calm presence somehow reassuring to Luna and her newborns rather than threatening. The garage, once a symbol of Ben's isolation, had been transformed, becoming a quiet, shared meeting point for them. A sacred space where they would sit, side by side, quietly observing the growing, playful family, and haltingly at first, talking. Ben found himself, slowly, cautiously, sharing stories about Ethan. Precious, happy memories he had so fiercely locked away, buried deep within his grief. Clara, in turn, spoke about her own profound loss. Her mother's long, arduous battle with cancer, the very experience that had, ironically, inspired her to become a hospice nurse. The Bobcat kittens, fueled by Luna's care and the safe environment, grew quickly, their beautiful spots becoming more distinct, their movements more confident, as they began to tentatively explore their enclosed, temporary world. Each tiny, wild creature developed a unique, captivating personality. The boldest one, always the first to cautiously venture out, they affectionately nicknamed Scout. The smallest, a bundle of fierce determination, they called Pip, who more than made up for his size with sheer grit. Two sisters, often most active under the cover of darkness, they fittingly named Luna and Star. And finally, the most cautious, the one who seemed to weigh every single move with thoughtful consideration, they aptly called Sage. As the kittens grew visibly stronger, more independent, Dr. Reed began the necessary, bittersweet preparations for their eventual release back into the wild. They're wild animals, she gently yet firmly reminded Ben and Clara. The best, the most responsible thing we can possibly do now is ensure they return to their natural, wild habitat. The wise wildlife vet had contacted a secluded, expansive nature preserve located about 50 miles north of Jacksonville. This preserve boasted a protected area, specifically designed, perfectly suited for bobcats, far removed from intrusive human development and teeming with abundant natural prey. The day of their release, a day filled with mixed emotions, came sooner, much sooner, than any of them had emotionally prepared for. On a clear, crisp morning in late April, they carefully, painstakingly loaded Luna and her precious kittens into special, secure transportation crates. The preserve's experienced rangers had thoughtfully selected a remote, tranquil area near a babbling stream, a spot offering plenty of natural coverage and ideal denning sites. Ben and Clara watched together, their hearts a mixture of sadness and pride, as the rangers slowly, gently opened the crates, one by one. The kittens, with a burst of innate wild energy, bounded out, their beautiful spotted coats instantly blending perfectly with the soft, dappled sunlight filtering down through the towering trees. Luna emerged last, her powerful body tense, surveying her new vast territory with sharp, alert eyes. She paused for just a single, poignant moment, looking back, directly back, at the two humans who had, against all odds, offered her sanctuary. offered her life. Then, with a fluid, silent grace, she disappeared into the thick underbrush, following her wild kittens home. On the quiet drive back to Pine Grove, a comfortable silence filled the car. Ben reached over, his hand hesitant at first, and gently took Clara's. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. For what?" Clara asked softly, her fingers lacing with his. "For calling me that day," he murmured, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. For helping me remember that life actually goes on. That it's okay to care again." Clara squeezed his hand tightly, thinking, marveling, at just how much had profoundly changed in their lives in only a few short weeks. "Thank you," she replied, her voice equally quiet, equally sincere. "Thank you for being there when I desperately needed help, for opening your home and your heart." In the quiet, unfolding months that followed, Ben's garage, once a wild maternity ward, returned slowly to its normal state. But other, far more profound changes remained, etched into the fabric of their lives. His lawn was now as meticulously, as lovingly tended as Clara's, and they often, naturally, worked in their gardens together, a silent, comforting companionship blooming between them. Rusty had a new, noticeable spring in his step, especially during his walks, now enjoyed with both Ben and Clara by his side. The menacing python was eventually, thankfully, caught by diligent wildlife authorities and safely relocated to a secure sanctuary. But its terrifying, brief appearance had set in motion a series of profound changes that continued to ripple outwards through their lives. 1 year later, almost to the day, Ben and Clara stood together on his front porch, watching another breathtaking sunset paint the evening sky. They had just returned from a visit to the preserve, where the rangers had reported occasional, heartwarming sightings of a bobcat family thriving, truly thriving, in their new, wild territory. Life. It just has this incredible way of bringing the right people together at the exact right time. Clara mused softly, leaning gently against Ben's shoulder, a sense of peace settling over her. Even if it takes a pregnant bobcat and a python to actually make it happen. Ben added with a quiet smile, wrapping a comforting arm around her. Rusty lay contentedly at their feet, his head resting peacefully on his paws as he watched the darkening yard, a loyal, silent presence. In the distance, a whippoorwill called its melancholic, beautiful evening song, the sound carrying softly across the very pine forest that had, against all odds, brought them all, human and animal, together. The extraordinary story of Luna and her kittens, a tale of survival and unexpected connection, became something of a quiet legend in Pine Grove. Clara, her compassionate heart forever open, continued to care for the neighborhood strays, but now, wonderfully, she had help. Ben's garage, though no longer a temporary bobcat nursery, had been transformed again, this time into a bustling workshop where he, with newfound purpose, built sturdy feeding stations and protective shelter boxes for local wildlife, which Clara, with joy, distributed to other passionate animal lovers in the community. They kept the baby monitor, not as a tool, but as a cherished reminder. Though it now sat quietly on a shelf alongside framed photos of Luna and her kittens, frozen moments of a miraculous time. Next to these, no longer hidden away, no longer a source of unbearable pain, was a cherished picture of Ethan with Rusty as a playful puppy, now celebrated openly as a vital part of their shared, evolving story. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, hand in hand, they would walk, with Rusty trotting happily beside them, to the very edge of the pine forest, silently remembering the day when nature's raw, unpredictable drama had so unexpectedly, so powerfully, brought them together. They never saw another python, a chilling reminder of the danger. But occasionally, just occasionally, they would glimpse a bobcat in the distance, a fleeting shadow in the trees, probably not Luna, but it always made them smile, a warmth spreading through them, to think of her and her family thriving, truly thriving, in their wild, untamed home. Their journey, sparked by a desperate struggle for survival, became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unexpected places where connection and healing can flourish. It's a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, reaching out, helping another living being, can illuminate our own path forward. What do you think about Clara and Ben's incredible story? Have you ever experienced an unexpected encounter that changed your life? Let me know in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give it a rating out of 10. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of courage, connection, and the wild world around us.